Pues a mí me toca presentar ahora el esperado capítulo séptimo.
Well, it's my part to present to you the long-awaited Chapter 7. I know you've all been anxiously awaiting, unable to sleep, knowing that Chapter 7 of our working document hasn't been published yet. But now, since it's finally been released, you can go back to sleep. It's Chapter 7 since, as we've said, there are 6 previous chapters that cover other important themes: identity and mission, formation of Regnum Christi members, commitments, how we handle apostolate, etc.
Los miembros, los compromisos, el modo de llevar el apostolado, etc. El capítulo séptimo, en cambio, se intitula...
Chapter 7, on the other hand, is titled Government and Place of First and Second Degree Members in the Canonical Structure of Regnum Christi. The title itself is a little frightening, and as you can tell, it's a more technical chapter than the previous ones. The previous chapters touch upon themes that we all know about, that are easy for us to grasp, themes that handle what Regnum Christi members themselves have lived. Here in Chapter 7, the question is, how are the first and second degree members and the movement as a whole going to be governed? But it's focused on the first and second degrees. Any statute needs to give rules and clear procedures about decision-making, the exercise of authority, and that's the big theme in this chapter. We wanted to begin tackling the problem by focusing on 2 essential questions in order to avoid a detailed discussion that runs the risk of getting sidetracked in other questions, like specific positions, the section director, the local coordinator, the territorial director, committees, councils, competencies, different groups. We could get lost in the big structure if we don't have clear principles to develop the statutes on first. So Chapter 7 presents an initial question to Regnum Christi members regarding their sense of belonging to the movement as first and second degree members. What are the consequences of becoming a first or second degree member from a juridical point of view? Other consequences, the spiritual, apostolic, and personal ones, are covered in the other chapters. The juridical consequences in the life of this group that has its own rules are touched upon here. And as I was telling you, we'll arrive at an answer by clarifying what we mean by belonging to the movement. And to do that, we'll make use of 2 different types of members that are common in church movements, in associations. We speak about being an associate member and about being an affiliate member. Let's see what these 2 basic concepts mean. Here it says, associate members recognize themselves as an essential part of the movement, and therefore they acquire full responsibility in safeguarding the charism and in participating in the life of the movement, juridically assuming the rights and duties proper to such a member, as defined by the statutes. Affiliate members, on the other hand, regard their sense of belonging to the movement as an individual commitment to live according to the charism and to collaborate in the apostolate, but without considering themselves directly responsible for either safeguarding the charism or directing the movement. Therefore, though stably bound to it, they do not assume the rights and duties proper to an associate member. In the end, the question is, what is your relationship to the movement, and what responsibilities or what rights and duties do you assume in this group which you've joined? Are they members in a spiritual sense? Of course. They feel called, they've experienced a vocation, and they commit themselves to living according to the charism, to participating in the apostolate, to participate in team life, and to carry the movement, in this sense, on their own shoulders. But the question arises whether they are also members in a juridical sense. What are the consequences? Because reading it, you think, well, what's the big deal? What consequences are there? What's the difference between the 2? In ordinary life, there's probably no difference. But in the statutes, there is. Associate members in an association are members in a juridical sense, and because of that, they participate in the elective procedures that the statutes indicate. And this is one of the most relevant consequences. They can elect representatives, and they themselves can be elected representatives. They're candidates eligible for election as representatives, and they can also be appointed to certain positions. When we talk about juridical consequences, this is essentially what we're referring to, that the associate member, since he's a member just like everyone else in a juridical sense, can again, just like everyone else, cast his vote in the elective procedures that the statutes define, and they can also be appointed, say, section director, member on the territorial council, etc. The affiliate member, on the other hand, says, I want to live the Spirit, I want to do apostolate, I think this is my thing, but I don't want to have the responsibility of directing the course of the movement's progress, of participating in the big decisions in a territorial or general assembly. I don't feel called to this. I don't think that it's my responsibility, so I'll leave it in other people's hands. That's the basic difference. Of course, you can have both types of members in the same movement, both types of belonging. Each person, understanding what he feels called to, also understands the responsibilities that implies for him. Let's suppose that a group of members, perhaps a majority, after deep reflection on their experience, their relationship with the consecrated branches of the movement, say, our way of living the Regnum Christi movement is more like affiliate members. This means that they leave the specifics of what it means to be an affiliate member in the hands of other people, in this case in the hands of the Legion and the consecrated branches. There may be a group that says, after considering our experience and thinking about what's best for our vocational fulfillment, both as individuals and for the movement as a whole, we believe that there should be some members that are more involved, and we can call these associate members. That then brings up the following question. How are they to be associated? Are they creating an association amongst themselves, a group with its own structure, an association for first and second degree members only? Or are they associating directly with the entire Regnum Christi movement, together with the legionaries and the consecrated men and women? It's something we have to consider, since Cardinal de Paolis himself raised it when he saw our situation, and Father Ghirlanda as well. They're not saying that Regnum Christi has to be made up exclusively of affiliated or associated members, but the first thing that pops into a canon lawyer's head is, well, we've got three entities here, the Legion, the consecrated men, and consecrated women, so let's create the fourth one, and later we can see how they work together. So we have to ask ourselves that question, even though it might be a little frightening. And I know that the question of creating an association of only first and second degree members can scare some people, even the members themselves, because, well, our experience hasn't been like that. So we have to understand how the question is presented, what the consequences of these two options would be. And they're explained here in Chapter 7. The main one, as I already said, is that if they decide to create an association among themselves, that means that they have their own government, their own general director, their own general council, their own general assembly, that has the responsibility of defining the lifestyle of first and second degree members and receiving new members, carrying this association forward, taking care of its own finances, etc. They would assume full responsibility over the first and second degrees. And then their representatives would join up with the representatives of the Legion and the consecrated men and women. Whereas on the other hand, if they associate directly with the Regnum Christi movement as a whole, they wouldn't have their own exclusive structure, but they'd participate at the same table, so to speak, where everyone gets together to make decisions regarding the movement. We bring this question up so that the Regnum Christi members, based on their own experience and intuition of what the movement is, can determine and express from their own point of view what they believe is better. To continue moving forward in the process of writing up the general statutes, we have to eliminate different hypotheses and variables. That's why we're asking these general questions, so that in light of what the members say, we can begin organizing the general structure. Regarding the question of whether they're associated among themselves or directly with the entire movement, you could say, well, they've never been associated only among themselves, so really there's no need even to ask them. No. The question has been raised by a competent authority, and it's a valid question. Lay people have a right to associate among themselves, and the Holy See wouldn't make a decision without first listening to those involved. The paragraph at the beginning of chapter 7 sums up the big principles that should shed light on this discernment. It says, as a movement, we must find the juridical structure that is best adapted to our situation. And here are the 4 values that need to enlighten our reflection, and that best helps the movement to maintain unity and fulfill its evangelizing mission, that helps the members to live out the fullness of their vocation, and that provides suitable resources for a good government. Those are the 4 values by which to assess the options we have. What is better to create communion? What is better for our mission? What is better for the members' fulfillment in each of the branches, in each group in particular? And also, what works better? Of course, the opinions about all this can be wide-ranging. Someone will say this, another will say that. These are the general principles that will help everyone to express themselves. So to sum up, chapter 7 has these 2 big questions. First, about the way to belong to Regnum Christi, either as associate members or affiliate members. And secondly, if it's as associate members, then we need to determine the way that members will associate, either amongst themselves or directly with the whole movement. And in this way, we'll have a clearer answer about all of this. So yes, we can write up the general statutes, even though there are still some challenges. But as long as it remains unclear where the first and second degree members are located within the general structure, we're still missing a variable that's too important in order to move on to the second stage, which consists in tackling all of the challenges that the general statutes raise. And just for your information, here's the table of contents for chapter 7, because it also deals with other themes. I've just wanted to focus on the 2 big questions presented, but before those questions, the chapters present a brief history of the associative life in Regnum Christi from the foundation up until now, that is, what Regnum Christi has been canonically throughout the years, and an explanation of what Father Eduardo mentioned earlier, about why the statutes from 2004 require an update. And then the chapter presents the 2 options that I've already spoken about here. And finally, a glossary and questions for group reflection, which is another way to synthesize the chapter. The Regnum Christi members will have to answer the following questions, first on a local level, then during the territorial convention, and finally in the international convention. Do I consider that I belong to Regnum Christi as an associated member or as an affiliated member? Why? We're also looking for the reasons, the reasoning behind their answers. Because it's not a matter of, well, I like this, I like leading, so I want this. And here we're not talking about a right or wrong answer. We want to know how the members are living it, what they think about themselves. The question isn't, what should everyone else think, or what should the statutes say? But rather, in my case, how am I living this? Or how do I think I should live out my sense of belonging to Regnum Christi? And then if they choose to be associate members, they have to determine whether they associate simply with themselves or directly with the entire movement. And we raise 3 other questions that have to do with government so that they can give us a bit of material and some light for the next steps we have to take. If there are matters in the lives of first and second degree members that should be discussed and decided upon exclusively among themselves, and what they would be. Because if there's quite a list of things that they want to reserve for themselves, then perhaps we'd have to think about them being an independent association. That's what this question is trying to find. And then some questions about the members' participation and things that pertain to everyone. So as you can see, it's kind of a dry issue, but the consequences will be significant for the movement. And that's why we think that legionaries and consecrated men and women should get to know all of this, so that they're able to accompany and explain and also give a personal opinion about it in a reasonable way. Because sometimes it's easy for us to speak about things before having read about them. Cardinal de Paulis sometimes told us, "You guys are great at speaking, but not so great at reading." So in this case, we need to read before speaking, especially those of us that accompany the Regnum Christi members. And also to support. Every mature, well-thought-out opinion is gold, since it helps us figure out where the Lord is taking us in this matter, which in the end is very relevant so that the movement can put together the statutes and fulfill their purpose, which is to safeguard the charism and provide a simple and faithful way to fulfill our mission the way God wants us to.
Creemos que Dios quiere de nosotros.